"Why would we bring you?" they said, boarding a family cruise. 6 hours later, the cruise was delayed because the CEO hadn't arrived yet. My name is Nina Clark. I'm 31 years old, and I'll never forget the moment my entire family walked past me with suitcases laughing, dressed in vacation whites, and didn't even glance in my direction. Not once. They were headed for a luxury family cruise that I hadn't been invited to. Correction, I had been explicitly uninvited. "Why would we bring you?" my sister Jenna had asked. "You don't even like parties." And that was the end of it. No ticket, no seat, not even a mention in the group chat. It's funny how people make you feel invisible, then act shocked when you disappear. I work in operations management, quiet job, behind the scenes. I coordinate teams, solve things no one notices, and make systems work without credit. Maybe that's why it hurt so much they saw me the way the world did, useful, not loved. Growing up, Jenna was the sparkly one, the dancer, the pageant kid, the golden child who brought honor to the Clark name. I was the weird one who preferred spreadsheets to spotlight. Dad used to joke, "At least one of our daughters won't need makeup to find work." I'd laugh back then, but laughing started to feel like swallowing nails. Last year I got promoted, Director of Logistics at Veyron Cruises. Global reach, 6,000 plus employees, one of the biggest maritime travel firms in the world. I didn't tell anyone, not because I wanted to be mysterious, but because I knew exactly what they'd say. "Oh, is that like a receptionist job on a ship?" They never asked what I do. They never wanted to know. When I was 28, I bought Mom a car, paid cash. She told people Jenna helped her get it through her network. When I got Dad that watch he used to talk about for years, he gave it to my brother, said it didn't suit him. I didn't even flinch. It became a pattern, one they never saw, because I never said anything. The cruise was supposed to be a big reunion, 4 generations, 26 family members all boarding together for a week-long trip through the Mediterranean. And me? I was the one who made it happen. I was the one who cleared the wait list, upgraded the cabins, arranged the welcome dinner, because I was the one running the entire damn cruise line. But I stayed silent. I watched their boarding videos on Instagram, watched my niece shout "family vacation" into the camera, her little arms hugging Jenna and her fiancé. I saw my uncle clink wine glasses with my dad, toasting to legacy. Not once did they say my name. 6 hours before departure, a VIP delay alert came through our main terminal. Something was wrong. The ship couldn't leave yet. Everyone was asking why. I just smiled, closed my laptop and whispered, "Because the CEO hasn't arrived." The delay was blamed on a technicality. At least, that's what they were told. "Port documentation mix-up," the staff said. "Unscheduled clearance issue." Passengers grumbled. My uncle paced. Jenna posted a story with a frustrated emoji captioned, "Classic chaos. Hope we sail before sunset." I watched all of it from the executive suite. Not one floor below them, 6 decks above. No one knew I was on board. Not the passengers, not my family, not even the staff, except one man, Marcus, my chief of staff, quiet, efficient, loyal. He'd been with me since I first stepped into this company's mess of inefficiency and arrogance, cleaned it top to bottom, and rebuilt it from operations up. "Do you want them to know yet?" he asked that morning when the guest manifest came in and he spotted half my family's names. I shook my head. "No," I said. "Let them settle in. Let them think they're just here to party." He didn't ask again. I walked the private corridor to my suite, the one with its own elevator and ocean-facing deck. The crew had placed my welcome gift on the table, a vintage wine from Tuscany, a handwritten note from the board, and a bouquet of winter lilies. I didn't drink, but I appreciated the gesture. Still, I didn't feel anything. Back when I was in college, I had begged to go on one trip, just one, with my family, a simple road trip they planned to Yosemite. Dad said the car was full. I offered to take a bus. Jenna rolled her eyes and said, "Why would you ruin the vibe?" I had stayed home and worked 2 extra shifts at the library. When they got back, Mom gave me a souvenir magnet. "I didn't forget you," she said. "Look, your name's even on it." It was spelled wrong. They all laughed. At dinner that evening on Deck 5, the first official night my family sat at the long, reserved table in the Vista Lounge. Champagne, candlelight, a view of the sea. I stayed back, watched from the upper balcony. A child tugged at my dress sleeve. "Are you famous?" she asked. "You look like the woman in the cruise magazine." I smiled. "That's my twin," I said. She giggled and ran off. Downstairs, my sister stood to give a toast. "To family," she said. "To those who show up." The table laughed. They didn't know what that meant, but I did. She looked around, then added, "Even if some people couldn't be here, we move on." I knew that tone, that knife wrapped in satin. The waiter passed behind her, delivering the menu cards I had customized myself for this dinner. Not once did she glance at him. She never wondered who had designed the experience she was bragging about. Not once did anyone think I could be behind the curtain, because I wasn't supposed to matter. But the thing about people who go invisible for too long, they learn how to watch everything. And when they move, nobody sees it coming. The second day started with confusion. Breakfast was delayed. Room service skipped 3 cabins. Jenna's fiancé received a call from the front desk asking if he had authorized a 3rd guest for their suite. He hadn't. Mom complained that her luggage was missing. It wasn't. It had simply been rerouted to Suite C27, a room that didn't exist. She stood in the hallway, arms folded, demanding answers. Dad blamed the staff. This is what happens when you outsource everything. I sipped my coffee from the executive terrace, watching it all unfold. I hadn't done anything yet. Not directly. But I had given Marcus a quiet order the night before. Let the system run without the family tags I programmed. No filters, no preferences. Let them see what normal passengers experience when they're not upgraded. He didn't flinch. Understood. For the first time in their lives, my family wasn't being prioritized. No early spa access, no line-cutting passes, no custom meal cards, no silent corrections behind the scenes. They were ordinary now, invisible, just like me. By noon, Jenna was arguing with a crew member about the cocktail she ordered. "It's supposed to have elderflower and mint," she hissed. The bartender nodded. "It does, just not imported. This is standard class." She blinked. Standard. That word must have stung. She wasn't used to being average. The family had grown accustomed to tailored experiences courtesy of invisible hands. They didn't know that for the last 5 years, I was that invisible hand. Every upgrade, every seat change, every waived fee or expedited pass? Me. Not once had they asked how it kept happening. They just assumed they deserved it. They never imagined the one they left behind had built the ship they stood on. In the afternoon, I joined the upper deck lounge with my company badge flipped inward, dressed in neutral shades, sunglasses low. Marcus walked beside me silently, carrying a tablet. "Passenger activity?" I asked. He tapped twice. "They've lodged 5 complaints already." "Any aggressive escalation?" Number, but Jenna said the word lawsuit twice. "Your uncle asked for a refund." I almost smiled. Let them stew. At 4 p.m., the ship-wide announcements glitched for a full 2 minutes. Instead of playing the usual jazz music and itinerary updates, it looped a brief internal file accidentally marked public. "All complaints tagged under Clark family are to be deprioritized. CEO override applied. No manual exceptions." My family was in the atrium. They heard it. Every single one of them. Silence fell like a curtain. I didn't speak. I didn't gloat. I didn't even blink. I simply turned to Marcus and said, "Initiate guest meet and greet. Move the press to 7 p.m. I'll make my public appearance then." He nodded. He knew what that meant. Let them whisper. Let them panic. Because when I walked in, every smile they faked at my expense would freeze on their faces. They'd start remembering every time they said, "Why would we bring you?" And they'd start to understand. I built the ship. I owned the ocean. And now, I was the storm. 7 p.m., Vista Ballroom, Deck 2. The event was titled Leadership and Legacy, Cruise Industry's Rising Titans. It had been promoted in every onboard newsletter and guest activity briefing. Most passengers assumed it was a corporate seminar. Optional. Forgettable. My family didn't even notice it until the staff began guiding guests toward the ballroom with champagne trays and camera crews setting up. That got their attention. Free alcohol always did. Jenna arrived in her fitted gold dress, sunglasses still on despite the indoor lighting. Her fiancé, Chase, walked in behind her, scrolling his phone. Dad wore a blazer he hadn't ironed. Mom whispered to the waiter, "What's the event? Will there be dancing?" And then the announcer took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are joined by the youngest CEO in Veyron maritime history. Please welcome Miss Nina Clark." The room applauded, then paused, heads turned, faces squinted. You could almost hear it like a physical echo. "Wait, Nina Clark?" I walked in through the side aisle, calm, controlled. Not in a glittering gown, not in a designer outfit, just a crisp tailored suit. Black, quiet, sharp. Jenna dropped her glass. Chase's jaw actually unhinged. Mom clutched her clutch tighter, and Dad whispered something under his breath. A name, maybe, or a curse. I stepped up to the podium, didn't look their way yet. "Good evening. Thank you for joining us aboard the Artemis. I'm honored to be here. Not just as your host, but as someone who has quietly worked behind the curtain for years to make voyages like this seamless." A chuckle from the crowd. "This is our flagship luxury liner, designed for elegance, built on precision, but most importantly fueled by people who never get acknowledged. People like I used to be. I paused. Let that sink in. Then I turned, and for the first time I looked straight at my family. Sometimes, the ones you ignore are the ones who make the ship sail. You could hear a pin drop. Jenna blinked slowly, like her mind was buffering. Mom half smiled, trying to convince herself it was a prank. Dad's mouth tightened. Uncle Rick, who once told me logistics sounded like filing papers for trucks, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I didn't linger. I ended the speech in 2 minutes flat. Enjoy your cruise. The next 4 days are yours to relax. Unless, of course, you start asking the questions some of you already are. Why weren't we told? I smiled. You were? You just weren't listening. The cameras clicked. Applause erupted, and I walked off stage without another glance. But from the corner of my eye, I saw it. Mom gripping Jenna's wrist, Dad wiping sweat from his brow, Chase looking at his drink like it might be poisoned. No screaming, no confrontation, just revelation. And that was always more devastating. I didn't attend breakfast the next morning, but my name did. The cruise newsletter, placed at every guest's table, featured a full-page spread. Spotlight, Nina Clark, the young visionary behind Artemis. Below it, a quote from my speech. You were told. You just weren't listening. Jenna nearly choked on her mimosa. At 9:43 a.m., Marcus forwarded me a message. Subject, request, private dinner, family. Sender, clark.family.dad@gmail.com. Content, would love to speak privately. Dinner, just the family, no press, just us. Please consider. I didn't reply. By noon, it was like the ship had turned upside down for them. For the first time, staff no longer smiled at them with rehearsed ease. For the first time, other passengers whispered when they walked by, not out of admiration but recognition. They were no longer the invisible elite. They were the story now. At lunch, I walked past them on the upper deck, alone, no bodyguard, no press. Mom stood. Nina, hi, honey. I didn't stop walking. Dad cleared his throat. Can we talk for a second? I looked at them, dead in the eyes. You said, why would we bring you? They both blinked. This cruise? You didn't. I brought you. Then I kept walking. That evening, they didn't show up to the dinner gala. The table meant for their party sat awkwardly empty under the golden chandeliers. Jenna posted nothing that day, not even on close friends. But silence didn't mean surrender. At 11:27 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Jenna. Jenna, okay, you made your point, but you can't just ghost your family. We're not strangers. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, me. You made me a stranger first. I just learned how to live like one. The thing about people like them, they think apologies fix stories. They don't. They just rewrite the credits. Marcus called. The finance team just flagged your parents' onboard account. They're trying to use premium access again, claiming executive clearance. I smiled. Deny it. Don't escalate. Just let them ask. Let them try the doors. Let them see they don't open. Not without the name they use to roll their eyes at. Not without me. Tomorrow would be the captain's dinner. Formal wear, red carpet photos, press meet, and one reserved table, mine, dead center, labeled Nina Clark, CEO. Guess who I was seating next to me? Not them. The captain's gala was the peak of the cruise. Red carpet, live orchestra, press flashing bulbs like lightning, guests in tuxedos and velvet gowns, and in the center of it all, table 7, my table. The nameplate said Nina Clark, CEO, Veron Maritime. Next to mine, another card, Dr. Evelyn Miles, my mentor, the one who called me a 1,000-year-old general trapped in a 20-something's body. I entered late. Not to be dramatic, just deliberate. People noticed. They always do when the one they dismissed walks in wearing everything they said you couldn't afford, with the power they said you'd never touch. Jenna tried to intercept me before the ballroom. She stood by the railing, alone. No phone, no followers, just her. You made your point, okay? She said. You've had your moment. So, now what? I stared at her. She blinked first. Nina, come on. We're sisters. We've fought before. But this is too far. I almost laughed. Too far. I spent college surviving on 2 jobs while you got tuition paid in full, I said. Mom said you deserved it. I didn't. You threw a party the day I dropped out, remember that? She looked down. And every cruise since? I watched from my tiny port cabin while you posted from the private deck, laughing about the help. That was me. Silence. So, no, this isn't too far. This is catching up. She bit her lip. Then what do you want? She whispered. An apology? Money? What? I stepped closer. I want exactly what I gave you for years. Silence. And I walked past her. Inside, the gala sparkled. Cameras, champagne towers, waiters in white gloves. At table 7, Evelyn stood and hugged me tightly. Took you long enough, she said with a smirk. Let them wait, I whispered. Across the ballroom, my parents stood awkwardly near the dessert bar. No table, no reservation, just guests. They waved slightly. I didn't wave back. The pianist struck a low C. The captain tapped his glass. Let us raise a toast. To the woman who made this vessel what it is. Miss Nina Clark. Applause. My glass clinked. And in the far corner, Mom dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin. Dad just stood still. They weren't used to being on the outside. They thought I'd be the one looking in forever. But tonight, they were learning the lesson I had memorized in silence. When you treat someone like a ghost long enough, they learn how to haunt you. The morning after the gala, I expected silence. Instead, I got a knock. Room service. Except it wasn't a tray, it was my father, standing there with a black envelope, hands folded like a schoolboy outside the principal's office. We didn't come to fight, he said quietly. Just talk. Behind him was my mother, pearls on, lipstick smudged, trying to smile like none of this had happened. I let them in, not out of kindness, out of control. Letting them sit on the edge of my room while I stood by the window felt right. They used to lock doors on me. Let them feel the weight now. Dad cleared his throat. Your mother and I, we talked last night. Mom nodded quickly as if it added weight. We may have made mistakes, she said, but we always wanted what's best for both our daughters. I raised an eyebrow. You sold my laptop on my 18th birthday and told me to be grateful we feed you. They went quiet. Dad tried again. We didn't know you'd become all this. So I had to earn your kindness? His jaw tightened. That's not what I... Yes, it is. Mom reached for the envelope. We wanted to give you this. It's not much, but maybe it's a start. I didn't touch it. A start? I asked. A start was what I needed when I had nothing. A start was when you watched me walk home in the rain after a closing shift because Jenna needed the car. This? I pointed at the envelope. This is not a start. This is panic. She looked wounded, like that word cut deeper than yelling ever could. Dad took a breath. We're not proud of what happened, but we're still your parents. I turned to the window. Parents? You gave me DNA and debt. Everything else? I built the scholarships, the internships, the late-night coding classes, the startups, the failures, the promotions, every damn thing. I turned. And now you want a seat at the table I had to build from scratch because you refused to let me sit at yours? The envelope was still on the table, unopened. Mom blinked back tears. Nina, please, don't erase us like this. I walked over slowly, picked up the envelope, tossed it back to them. I'm not erasing you. I'm just not rewriting history. They stood, stiff, heavy. At the door, Dad looked back once. We'll be in room 428, if you change your mind. I didn't answer. When they left, I locked the door and stood in the silence. No tears, no music, no victory dance, just a steady, quiet beat in my chest. I wasn't heartless. I just finally stopped carrying a weight no one else ever helped me lift. The press came hard after the gala. CEO Nina Clark silently dismantles toxic family power structures on a cruise. Clark's red carpet return. The heiress nobody saw coming. They called it revenge. I didn't correct them. Because what else do people call it when someone they tried to bury stands over them holding the pen? But in the quiet hours, away from champagne and strategy meetings, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. Not for them. For the version of me that waited years for a chair at their table, not realizing I was building a kingdom of my own the whole time. Marcus texted. Marcus, press wants an exclusive sit-down. Morning of docking. Just you. Full backstory. Want it? I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I stood at the observation deck, barefoot, with wind pulling strands of my hair into my face. Below, the sea glistened like secrets. Endless, beautiful, terrifying. That night, there was one final event. The closing masquerade. I wore black velvet, no mask, no pretense. Just me, the version they never bothered to see. They came late. My parents. Standing by the champagne fountain, watching me like tourists outside a palace they once owned. I didn't approach, but they knew. Everyone knew who held the room. One journalist tried to corner me. Miss Clark, care to comment on your family dynamic after such a powerful return? I smiled politely. Powerful? I echoed. It wasn't power. It was clarity. And them? He asked, nodding subtly toward my parents. I looked at them. Mom was looking down. Dad was pretending to be interested in the ice sculpture. They taught me everything I needed, I said softly. What to never become. Back in my room, there was a note under my door, folded neatly. Unfamiliar handwriting. You've changed everything for girls like me. Thank you, room 726. It wasn't signed, but that was the first time since the cruise began that I let myself sit down and breathe. I thought the revenge would feel like fire, like roaring applause, but all it felt like was release. Like letting go of a rope you didn't realize was burning your hands. There were no more knocks, no more envelopes, no more apologies wrapped in guilt. And I didn't chase closure. I let the silence answer, because sometimes the loudest justice is absence. We docked at dawn. No fireworks, no fanfare, just quiet waves lapping the port and sunlight slicing the horizon in two. The crew moved like clockwork. Guests shuffled for disembarkation. The luxury ended with barcode scans and baggage tags. For everyone else, not me. A private car waited near the gangplank. My name on the placard. My team in headsets. My mother standing behind the barrier. Alone. No pearls. No makeup. Just a folded letter in her hand and eyes swollen like she'd been practicing how to cry. I didn't stop, but I didn't walk past her either. I stood still. That was enough. "Nina," she called softly. "Please." She took a step forward. The security guard raised a hand. She froze. "I'm not here to beg," she added. "I'm here to explain." That word again. Explain. After a decade of silence, insults, mockery, erasure, now they wanted explanation. "We made choices," she said. "Hard ones. We thought Jenna needed more." She always cried louder. "And you?" She shrugged. "You were always so quiet, so capable. We didn't think you'd break." I blinked once. "And when I did?" I asked. She didn't have an answer. "What do you want, Mom?" She hesitated, unfolded the letter. "Your father has cancer." It landed like cold air between us. "He's asking for help, for time, for peace." I stood still. "You left me on hospital bills when I was 23, I said. "You sold my laptop for a phone Jenna didn't even use a year later. You watched me miss meals. But now that your comfort is threatened, now you remember I exist?" She swallowed. "We were wrong. I know we were. But please don't let him die thinking you hate him." I didn't flinch. Then maybe he should have lived like he loved me. I didn't take the letter. Didn't give her a hug. Didn't soften my voice. I just stepped into the car and closed the door. As the driver pulled away, I saw her silhouette in the rearview mirror. Still standing there. Still holding that paper. Still too late, too. At the hotel, there were more interviews waiting. A business pitch. A new advisory board role. But none of it mattered for an hour. I sat on the balcony. Just me. My coffee. And the silence. I wasn't cruel. I just didn't owe them the version of me they never believed could exist. 2 weeks later, the cruise felt like a dream someone else had. The press moved on. The hashtags faded. The articles got buried under newer headlines. But I wasn't looking for legacy. I was looking for silence, and for the first time, I had it. At 7:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Jenna. "Mom says you refuse to see Dad. If he dies, just know that's on you." No greeting, no warmth, just blame. Classic. I didn't reply. Not because it didn't sting, it did, but because I knew something now. Guilt is their final leash, and I had already unclipped it. I still checked the news, still read financial reports, still took meetings, but I also started writing again. Short stories, old poems, pieces of myself I hadn't looked at in years. Because power is only half the point. The other half is peace. A week later, I donated to the oncology wing of the same hospital they'd once refused to help me pay for. Not in Dad's name, in mine. Nina Clark, daughter, survivor, builder. Not to spite them. To rewrite my story in ink they could never smear. Marcus called. "So what's next?" I smiled. "Not revenge." He paused. "That's new." "Yeah," I said. "Turns out healing hits harder." On Sunday, I walked through a bookstore near the bay. A girl at the register whispered to her friend when I passed. Not in fear, not in awe, just in recognition. She's the one who changed everything. I stepped outside, closed my eyes, let the breeze catch my hair. For the first time, no one was watching, and I didn't care, because the best revenge is never needing it again. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.